Well, hi everybody and welcome to the online version of the St. Augustine Prep class. This is the preparation for the field study tour that we'll be doing in just a few days. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody knows who I am. I'm Laura Caruso, for those of you that have not met me yet, and I am very much looking forward to meeting you and spending time with you in St. Augustine, exploring God's hand in the history of what's called the ancient city. And ancient's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. But St. Augustine is an old place, and its history, particularly its modern history, if you will, dates back 450 years. And so we have a lot to learn. This will be our tool to explore or to lay some foundations for what we're going to learn on site in St. Augustine. So students, you should have a packet that looks like this, that says Florida's Providential History across the top. It has a place for you to put your name, and I'd encourage you to go ahead and you write your name on the front of that packet, and we will get started in just a moment. I do have another piece of introductory information that I want to be sure parents have. In the packets that were mailed out or delivered to you, parents received a map like this. And looking at, yes, I got it right. Looking at that map, it's a two-sided map. So I want to be sure you're looking at the right side for our starting point. When we first meet on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, we're meeting at the Mission de Nombre de Dios, and it is indicated on the more zoomed out map by this blue rectangle. There's free parking here, and I'd encourage you to get there maybe about 8:55 so we can begin promptly at 9 o'clock. And again, just a reminder to make sure you've done any bathroom stops or any of that before you arrive here, and that you've got your lunches and everything all packed in the vehicle and ready to go. We don't need to get them out until later, but there won't be time once we get started here at the Mission at 9 o'clock. We'll just go straight through until the afternoon. Okay, so that's that. On the flip side of that map, those of you that are staying at the Best Western, I've marked the Best Western with a BW on your map, and then all the rest of you show this route on the map. We will use that to get to our second stop. So you don't need to, be too tuned into that right now. I'll go over this at the Mission de Nombre de Dios. So just again a reminder, this Mission de Nombre de Dios is our first stop on Tuesday morning. That's where I'll meet you at 9 o'clock, or 8:55, even better. One other introductory piece of information. You'll notice that the front of this packet says it's Florida's Providential History, that's what we're learning about. And I want to be sure that everybody's kind of on the same page as far as the idea of providence and what that is. Providence is a word that was used extensively during the colonial period and by our founding fathers. It's a word that came out of the Reformation. And providence, if we looked it up in the American Dictionary of the English Language, this is Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. And if we want to understand what the founders meant, then we look up words in a book that was contemporary to them. And so we look up the word providence, and it says that providence is the care and superintendence that God exercises over his creatures. And he that acknowledges a creation but denies a providence finds himself in a palpable contradiction. Now I know for my younger students that are listening to this, those are a lot of big words. But basically that just means that God didn't just create and take his hands off. If God created, he also provides. That's the root of that word, providential. That God is involved in the lives of his creation. We talk all the time about how God is sovereign and God is in control. And most of our churches, we sing songs about that very thing. And yet we often miss or we forget that God is also the author of history. It truly is his story. We can see, even in the word, the English word history, that it's his story. That God created the world and he created time. He started time. We mark time by the way that the planets move and the days and the seasons and the times. Well, God created that for the benefit of his creation. And at some point, time as we know it, time will end. But that period in between that's marked by time, by hours and days and seasons, that time, whoops, my hand's in here. That time in between, that's not the story of what man has been accomplishing through all of time. That's God's story. It's what God has been accomplishing through all of time. God is accomplishing his plan, using men, using nations, but it's his plan, and it won't be thwarted. So when we look at history, when I say providential history, it means we're going to look at it from the perspective of God's hand moving in time, or God's hand moving in the story of Florida and how it came to be. And so that's the approach that we'll take as we study history. You'll also notice that I've said that this story begins in Europe, and it does. So with no further ado, let's get started.